And this is the last Shadowscast for this volume. This is 1 year's worth of Shadowscast material, and it's mainly about Korea. A lot of the clips in this episode have been not suitable for the previous episodes, and so they've all wound up being collected here in Shadowscast 10. In terms of game material, well, let's let you be surprised. It's in there somewhere. Travel from Seoul to the southern end of the country, basically Busan and points in between, can be accomplished most quickly by riding the KTX, which, is a normal train. However, it's a normal train that goes 300 kph. Well, it's Christmas Eve, and I've just been out doing some last-minute Christmas shopping over there. And as you can see, it's not very busy, and it's no longer very wintry. Most of the snow is gone. And I thought I would take a moment and talk about holidays in Korea. See, it's only been recently that Korea has ceased being a 6 or 7 day a week work nation. In the last few years, more and more companies have shifted over to the idea that it's all right to only work 5 days a week and employ some part-time workers and that sort of thing. So the citizens are trying their best to get used to the idea of having so much time off. From our point of view, they still don't have very much time off, but every little victory. As you walk down the street on a holiday, today is not a holiday, it's Christmas Eve as I record this, it's a normal working day, and many people will have tomorrow off, but not everybody, even though it is a national holiday, the one day for Christmas. The street will look very much like it does today, with a lot of people all going in one direction and very few people going in the other. And in the morning, the directional flow would be the opposite. Everyone going to work or whatever. And seeing Christmas decorations up is something that I've only been seeing here in the last 5 years or so. Churches would always be decorated for Christmas, but businesses not so much. But it has finally been recognized that Christmas is very good for business. And so things are changing. And this is a regular street in downtown Daejeon on Christmas Eve. There's not much in the way of noise control laws in Korea. Basically, you should be quiet before 7 a.m. and after 10 p.m. Although, like everything else, it's a little bit of unless you stop me, I'll do what I want. So as I walk down this street, I'll be assaulted with music or touts calling me to come in at sometimes incredible volumes. At this end of the street, it's just traffic noise that I'm competing with, but we are about to go down into the subway. This is Yongmun Station in the middle of Daejeon. I'm on my way home, and I thought I would give you a look at it. Very narrow stairs, wouldn't you say? So, there are escalators at some exits, but not all exits. And the prevailing theory is that the government wants people to be healthy. One theory is as good as another. Now, one interesting thing from my point of view is the extreme care that's paid for blind people who might be needing to navigate the subway system. Now, in every subway and train station and bus station in the entire nation, and most main sidewalks in the entire nation, these raised tiles, which have braille dots to let you know where you are everywhere. In addition, every handrail, if we walk over to a handrail, just over here, every handrail, you can see the dark sign. Every handrail has braille as well. Something that we should consider, I think. As I've mentioned in the past, all the signs are in at least 2 languages. And as you ride the subway, you'll hear announcements in at least 2 languages. And during special events, such as during the World Cup in 2002, more languages were added. It's impressive. So for the major signs, we have Korean, English, Chinese characters, and of course numbers and arrows, and braille. Something that the government doesn't talk about much is suicide by train, but like many other nations around the world, they've had to address it. And so, little by little, every station is having these safety doors added, and all the extra precautions they can possibly manage to prevent any further loss of life in this way. After 9/11, things like this emergency phone were added, and there were a few violent events that took place in the subway station, one of which was a man setting fire to the car with basically a Molotov cocktail in this city. And so an extreme amount of precaution has been paid to ensuring that fire extinguishers and gas masks and security procedures are clear for everybody on the train. They don't want this to happen again. And they're acting very decisively to do what they can to prevent it. So on the walls of subway stations, you'll even find flashlights to help you find your way through the smoke. Doesn't a location like this scream for some kind of cyberpunk action? I mean, do you really need a tunnel longer than that? This is one killer location for an ambush. And I can pass through it every day if I like. It's running under the roadway. Sealed off by plexiglass and metal air vents. So a battle staged in such a place could get really interesting really quickly, as it goes from just a long concrete tunnel, possibly going down into a crowded subway station, or rising up into a crowded exit plaza filled with the usual dynamic hustle and bustle of a nighttime taxi stand as people come out of the main train station and this subway station junction, and into this major intersection. Okay? All of these locations within inches of each other. Pretty interesting. But we're going to go take a long walk through the tunnel, so I'm going to sign out. Things like graffiti are relatively new, and prior to the World Cup, I really didn't encounter graffiti all that often. Of course, now you encounter it everywhere. I thought it might be appropriate to take this time, as noisy as it is, as I walk through this endless tunnel, I thought it might be appropriate to take this time to discuss what it's like to be a very visible minority in a very crowded place, particularly in the context of role-playing. If you're conducting a game like Shadowrun or Cyberpunk, and it's happening in one of the crowded mega cities, and you're not from around those parts, you really do stand out. Now, while people do have a studied habit of ignoring virtually everything that goes on around them, it doesn't mean that they don't notice everything that goes on around them. The cultural differences, such as the amount of personal space and what is and is not considered to be appropriate to do in a public place. I don't think he knows we're here yet. He's singing and dancing to himself. But anyway, people will crowd very close to you, and I've noticed that newcomers can get very uncomfortable when this happens, particularly if someone walks up this close to them before stepping aside to make way on a staircase or coming in and out of the subway. And it takes a while to adapt to this new concept that personal space is so close, so limited. But once you do, you start to notice other patterns, like who shifts out of the way first. Is it the older person or the younger person on the street? And are people aware of things like pregnant women or people carrying packages? So anyway, now we're at the end of the tunnel. There is, of course, the elevator for those unable to take the stairs. And of course, at the very end, there is yet another flight of stairs. In the next year, I'm going to be focusing a lot on RuneQuest, particularly the 6th edition of RuneQuest, and a little bit on basic role-playing, BRP, Call of Cthulhu, and Stormbringer, and things like that. I won't be talking about Ubiquity as much, but you can bet I'll be playing it. And from time to time, I'll still be talking about MechWarrior, although that campaign is shrunk down to a very manageable level with just 2 players right now. Most of what future Shadowscasts may get into will be gaming in Korea and working with RuneQuest. So as we segue away from a lot of Ubiquity content, I think it's time for an overview of the game. And I love it even more than I did when I started getting into it. What is Ubiquity? I've described it in the past as being fast and efficient and getting out of your way. This is all true. This is still true. Ubiquity characters are built through a point-buy system, which gives you a choice of trying to balance all of the statistics equally, or trying to choose 2 areas where you're slightly above average, or 1 area where you're exceptional. It's an interesting choice. Attributes can be increased in play with the significant expenditure of experience. Characters are also defined by talents. And talents are, especially in a pulp or swashbuckling genre, talents are that signature ability or range of abilities that your character might be known for, like in terms of the pulp action hero, the Spider or the Shadow, wielding two guns at the same time, or again referencing the Spider being very accurate, or the Shadow being able to pass unnoticed, that sort of thing. Now those are extreme pulp cases. The typical two-fisted hero, there are talents that help you emulate that core characteristic as well. These are also very expensive in terms of purchasing them, and so characters remain fairly distinguished from one another throughout play, even as experience points are built up. Not only because different personalities are interested in different abilities, but just because the costs are prohibitive enough that you tend to follow a linked thematic track in order to build your character or make them more of what they have been. Characters are also defined through archetypes. What is the base element of their profession or their outlook on life? And they're defined by flaws. Now all of this is tied together with genre. So if you're playing Hollow Earth Expedition, the flavor or the tone of the talents, the flavor, the tone of the flaws and archetypes, these set your character creation machine in motion in a particular direction. Desolation, All for One, and Leagues of Adventure have the same effect. So what you get when you're purchasing one of the main game lines for Ubiquity is the mood and the atmosphere translated through the Ubiquity game mechanics. Ubiquity in use is basically a die pool game. You need to roll a certain number of successes in a die pool. Now, unlike in many other games, where the target number might be, like in World of Darkness, a 7, an 8, or a 9, depending on which version of the World of Darkness you're exploring, on a 10-sided die. So, fairly low chance of getting a success on a die and needing to accrue many of them. Now, Ubiquity takes it in a different direction. On any given die, you have a 50% chance of success. All right. Now, this doesn't mean that you're going to succeed more often in Ubiquity, because the structure of what is and isn't a success is defined a little differently. But what it does allow you to do is, with your die pool, you can just look at it and have a very intuitive and internalized sense of whether or not you can take that risk, or just how risky that action is. What that also allows you to do is opt not to roll. Now, while it's encouraged to roll in combat all the time to increase tension, for those things that your character should be good at, where in dice pool games you often have people complaining that, I rolled 10 dice and I only got one success, even though I'm supposedly this awesome person at that skill, this pretty much vanishes in Ubiquity. You can choose to take the average, which means if you have enough successes on average for that pool, meaning if you need 5 successes and you have 10 dice, you can choose to succeed. Now, you'll just succeed, of course, but often that's enough. What else can we say about Ubiquity? As I mentioned many times, Ubiquity gets out of your way, and this is what I love about it. It moves into the background. It's so easy to learn. It's not always easy to interpret as you're starting out, because attribute skills look lower than in other games, and people carrying baggage forward from one game to another game can feel like their characters are weaker. And during character creation, there's a little bit of math with primary characteristics and secondary characteristics derived from those primary characteristics. And, that getting a sense of how your attributes relate to those secondary skills or secondary traits, which are health and initiative and perception, things like that. That can take a little adjustment, or getting to know you, period. But once your players have got it, and they'll spend far less time learning this game than most games out there, the system really does step into the background and become invisible, even with something so complicated as freeform magic. And if that's not a compliment, I don't know what is. So after a slight delay, my pre-order of the core box and fleet boxes has now been completed. This strange box, which amusingly enough tells me that it's Star Trek of Catan, but of course is not, has arrived today. So let's take a quick look inside. More peanuts. Wow, there's really a lot of this stuff in here. So, which one is on top? The British fleet box was on top. So there it is. So we see it has a set of dice included. Okay. And the back of the box reveals the rest of the contents. Okay. The French fleet box. Okay, so today at work my fleet boxes came. So the British fleet box and the French fleet box. I ordered these with the pre-order with the core box set. So just by way of comparison, there's the core box. I have it on the top of the shelf. And if you take one fleet box, then you can neatly stack it with the other fleet box, and they're just about as long. Okay, about half as deep. So peeling off the plastic, always excellent to watch that in an unboxing video. So it's a very tight-fitting box, very well constructed box. Now, what I've heard is that the biggest complaint is how much air is in the box. So let's see what our first impression is. Well, I guess we can understand why that might seem like there's a lot of air. Because, well, there's a lot of air. So we have our battleship, cruiser, and the two destroyers. We have our set of dice. We have extra bases and stands. Okay. Now we also have the additional ship cards and fleet recognition cards. Okay. This will be repeated for the French, but let's take a look. So, peeling plastic from the French. So once again, our first impression. All right. We have the French battleship, cruiser, and the two destroyers, dice and stands, with ship cards and recognition cards. Okay. Now, the purpose of these fleet boxes is to basically extend your core fleet, allowing for larger actions and providing you with extra ship cards so that you have a wider variety of ships in play. And that is all. So if you've seen Leviathans before, then you're familiar with the ship recognition cards. This is of the Paris class battleship. Right. There's a history and stats on the vessel. And then we can find the Paris class, right, ship card, okay, for actually playing the game. So this is what I got. Quorum. Basically a setting for Stormbringer. Several copies of the Antarctic map and the printed game aids for Beyond the Mountains of Madness. I'm thinking about running the campaign again this year, and here it is. Pretty cool. And Deeper Fundus. Just, I guess at this point doesn't need any explanation. With their usual speed and grace, FRP Games from Santa Clara, California, have sent me what I wished for. Now, I ordered this just before Christmas, so they would have been in the midst of a rush, and it has arrived during our New Year holiday. And I'm going to assume that it arrived on Monday. And I've just come back to the office. It's Wednesday, and here it is waiting for me. If you haven't ordered from FRP Games and wondered what the packaging might be like, you get a nice priority mail package. Yeah, nice and tight. It's very hefty. You'll see what I ordered in a minute. If you're an international customer, you will like very much how they fill out the customs form. It saves you a lot of hassle. All right, let's see what's inside. Rather than watch me cut this open one-handed, I'll stop here. Okay, so I've cut through everything, and inside on top, wedged in there fairly tightly. We'll see that I got RuneQuest 6, and checking the corners, everything seems okay, doesn't it? A little bit of folding there. Okay. Thick book. Next, we have the hardcover, The Time of War Companion. I have to say I'm a little disappointed that the spine does not match the other core books, but what are you going to do? If you ask anybody who lives here what's one of the most wonderful or memorable things or aspects about life in Korea, chances are that very high on the list will be the assortment of food available on the street. Now, because of the bright lights, you can't really see what I'm talking about, but I'm going to move and you'll get a look at one of my favorite street things. What you're looking at is the barbecue chicken truck. What the sign basically says is that it's a charcoal barbecuing process, and it's well-being barbecue, and you'll get 3 whole chickens for about $10. And if there's anything better than this, if there's anything sweeter than this in life, right now I cannot think of it, at least from a food perspective. So, armed with 3 delicious barbecue chickens, I'm going to have dinner. So unappetizing as it looks, one gets a black vinyl plastic bag to carry home, and inside are your 3 chickens wrapped up in nice sanitary paper and coming complete with a couple of kinds of sauce and packages of salt. Of course, I have my own salt. So inside, oh, the smell is incredible. All right, inside we have these 3 succulent roasted chickens waiting for me to consume them and get ready for some deep game thoughts. I'm ready for role-playing gaming and nice, fresh, steaming barbecued game on my table. But no meal could possibly be complete without a frosty, ice-cold mug of Coca-Cola and a little metal lidded bowl of fresh rice. Mm-hmm.